Good morning again, everybody. Thank you so much for coming down today. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Sergeant Jackie Davis. I'm with the County Police Department, and I would like to introduce who we have up here today. We have our County Executive, Mr. Steuart Pittman. We have our Superintendent of Detention Facilities, Mr. Terry Kokolas, my Chief of Police, Tim Altamari. We also have County Attorney Greg Swain, as well as Gabriella Carl Esquire from the University of Maryland School of Law Immigration Clinic. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Pittman up.
So, welcome to Anne Arundel County. We are here to talk about two agreements that Anne Arundel County has with Immigration Customs Enforcement. And I want to first give you a little bit of a sense of the values that I think that the residents of this county come to these issues with, and certainly the values that I come to these issues with. First of all, and maybe most important, that I think most Anne Arundel County residents respect our law enforcement and our criminal justice system, which is why we have these folks right up here with us. And that the most important obligation that I have as county executive is to keep the communities of this county safe. So that's very important. On immigration policy, we all know that it swings with the political pendulum in Washington, but our values do not. And so all of us believe that do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And so when we are dealing with human beings in this county, we treat them the way we would want to be treated, no matter where they come from. I also believe that, and ran in this campaign, on transparency and fiscal accountability, so that when we have a program that our county runs, whether it's with a partner in the federal government or it's our own program, that we have to be transparent about where the money comes from and how it gets spent and what it costs us. So 287G we'll start with. And I want to tell you a little bit about how it works. We have some experts here that will get into more detail about it. But basically, we have an agreement with the federal government that trains, deputizes, and supervises our detention officers so that they can interview foreign-born people who have been arrested. And they do this in the Jennifer Road Detention Center. We have 12 folks that are trained and deputized to do this work with ICE. The training is 4 weeks. It's off-site. We pay their salaries while they're being trained. The program is a replication of the criminal alien program that will continue, that existed before December of 2017 when we started the 287G. The difference is that in the future, ICE staff will be doing the work that our staff has been doing when people come into the jail. It follows the live scan prints. When people are arrested in the streets, they get a live scan print done, and the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security all have access to that information. So by the time somebody comes into our jail, in most cases, ICE is aware of it, and they're aware of their immigration status. So the way it works without 287G is they come in, they're processed, the live scan goes in, and ICE is in Baltimore, and ICE has staff that sometimes are here and sometimes are in Baltimore, and they can come into our jail at any time, and they can interview people about their immigration status. Usually they already know from the live scan. So the way this started in Anne Arundel County was that first there was a resolution way back in November of 2016 when there was talk of an agreement like this in Anne Arundel County, and our county council passed a resolution saying, first it was a resolution in opposition to the program. It was amended to get the majority 4 votes that they needed, and it said that any arrangement that Anne Arundel County has with ICE or the federal government on immigration, that we need to have transparency about the money, and we should not be mingling our money with the federal government's money. June 2017, the memorandum of agreement was signed between County Executive Steuart and ICE, and then it wasn't until December of 2017 that the first detainees were interviewed by our detention officers after they had been trained. Since that time, 193 foreign-born people were interviewed. 69 of those were determined to have either overstayed their visas or had entered the country without authorization. Those 69 people came from 47 different countries. 37 of those were brought in for committing violent offenses and were therefore unlikely to be released to ICE anytime soon because they go through our criminal justice system before they go to ICE. So the crime is adjudicated. If they go to jail, they stay there for as long as the judge determines, and then they go to ICE. So what I said during the campaign was that I was not in favor of the 287G program. What I said in the inaugural speech on December 3rd was that we would do a report on the status and the impact of the program in Anne Arundel County, and then we would kiss it goodbye. You have a copy of that report. It was just released today. We will be terminating it pursuant to Section 21 of the Memorandum of Understanding. I will sign a letter to ICE. I've spoken to them already. We'll sign a letter that we will send to them today, and they will get tomorrow, ending the program. The way this happened was that the day after my speech, ICE removed the equipment from the detention center that was used by our staff to be able to process people when they came in. The Superintendent Kokolas, who's here, suspended the activity of those detention officers. And then today, I'm fulfilling the promise that I made to provide the report and to formally end the MOA. There has been a lot of fear in the communities of Anne Arundel County about this, based in part, I believe, on a misunderstanding of what 287G actually is. So there was a December 16th article on the front page of our local paper with a headline that said, "Records show 287G progress," and then a subheading that said, "Half of immigrants flagged by ICE in county jails were charged with violent crimes." So naturally, people who don't read, that's factually true, but half the people who don't read beyond the headline were concerned that, in fact, there were 37 people who were violent criminals who were taken off the streets because of 287G, and that if I ended the program, those folks might go back into the communities. That's not the case. Clearly not the case. The issue became a big one in the campaign, the 2018 campaign. It actually started in the 2017 aldermanic race in Annapolis. Then it was used in the Republican primaries by some of the candidates against more moderate Republican candidates, and then it was used in the county executive's race where MS-13, a gang that is based in El Salvador, was talked about in a lot of campaign materials, and 287G was talked about as a way to keep us safe, and there were suggestions that candidates like myself would be turning criminals loose on the communities, to be blunt, and allowing people to go out and commit crimes in the communities. I don't believe that, clearly it backfired. The majority of voters elected people who had not sent that kind of information out. I believe that a unified community is a safe community, and that a divided community is a vulnerable community. I have met with Superintendent Kokolas. I have met with Chief Altamari of the police department. In particular, with Chief Altamari, I wanted to be briefed on all of the public safety work that we're doing, particularly with respect to gangs and gangs from foreign countries. And I know he'll talk something about that. I've had a concern all along that people who live in communities that are being threatened by gangs, particularly MS-13 in Anne Arundel County, they're afraid of deportation. They do not want to be in a position where they or a family member or a neighbor who is undocumented and working here in Anne Arundel County will be deported. And it's very important, if we're going to combat MS-13 or any of the other gangs that grow and that exist off of extortion payments, extortion from people who fear deportation, that we need to work closely with them. So We will continue that work, and Chief will tell you some more about that work. So I'm going to step down.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we'd like to ask the Superintendent of the Detention Facilities, Terry Kokolas, to say a few words.
Good morning. My name is Terry Kokolas, and I'm Superintendent of Detention Facilities in Anne Arundel County. And I have primary responsibility for both of the programs that were discussed by County Executive Pittman. The Department of Detention Facilities, like many other local facilities in the state of Maryland, has long participated and been in compliance with all fidelity, federal and state regulations regarding immigration in our county jails. The first misnomer of the 287G program is that anybody is brought to a local facility for the sole purpose of immigration violations. That is not the case. Anybody who is brought into a local facility is always charged under local criminal code for committing a crime in a local jurisdiction. The crime has to be incarcerable. The individual sees either a district court judge or they see a district court commissioner, and they are either released or they are remanded to the custody of the warden of the Jennifer Road facility. In such cases, the 287G at that point during the intake process captures information about individuals who are not born in the United States, also known as foreign born. There are two reasons for that. Number one is the consular notification process that is mandatory for local law enforcement to ensure that anybody who is a resident of a foreign country has the opportunity to contact their consul, normally in D.C. During this process, for up until the 287G program, County Executive talked about the CAP program. The CAP program is part of Secure Communities, which is a phrase long used by immigration authorities. The CAP program is a segment of the Secure Communities, and it actually closes the link on the live scan prints that are sent to the FBI, shared with Homeland Security, and when an individual is incarcerated, the circle is closed and the individual is now in custody. The 287G merely deputizes detention officers in the county to not only have access to federal databases after they've completed the training, but also have the authority to file a detainer, which is part of the process of immigration. The detainer has been a term of long consternation in the state of Maryland. There have been two Attorney General's opinions on detainers. The first was in 2014. The opinion in 2014 merely said that an ICE detainer can be honored, but an individual will not be held any longer in the custody of a local jail as anybody else who has a charge that is dropped, vindicated, or time served. The process will then ensure that Homeland Security is notified that they have an ICE detainer and someone is being released, and there's a designated time period that is then put into effect to ensure that an individual is either picked up by ICE or is released even with an ICE detainer. That has been the process 13 or 14 years. It is not a current process. The 287G was what happened with the 287G. It was very clear. The county executive made a promise, and the superintendent was delivering on the promise. I just did it a little bit earlier than I should have. When I provided the instruction to my staff to stop processing by 287G, the Homeland Security unit took the equipment out at the same time. So even if we wanted to revert as a, oops, I got it wrong, the equipment was no longer in operation. Since the time that the 287G has been discontinued, we have reverted to the CAP program, where the same information that we collect and input into federal databases is provided to the ICE field office in Baltimore. They put the information in the database, and then they notify the Jennifer Road facility that they are filing a detainer on an individual. So the fidelity of the program of honoring ICE detainers has not changed. The change is that Anne Arundel County Department of Detention Facility officers are not providing the input and database information to then file the detainer. The 287G program works under the supervision of an ICE agent that is accessible 24/7 and is on site quite frequently. I will say that Homeland Security has been a great partner to the county, but the county discontinuing the 287G program will not in any way interfere with providing information to Homeland Security so that they can still file detainers, if applicable, for any of a vast assortment of reasons. So we've come full circle. We cooperated with the criminal alien program for years, providing the information to ICE. We adopted the 287G program where we were deputized, and it really multiplied the ICE agents and provided the work at the Jennifer Road facility. We've discontinued the program, and we've reverted to going back to notifying the agents in Baltimore when we have foreign-born individuals in custody. Those that the county executive indicated came in with violent charges, and the violent charges can be determined as Class 1 felonies. Those individuals go through the same exact judicial system that anybody else charged with the exact same charge by county police, Annapolis City Police, County Sheriff's Department would also apply to those individuals. So there's been no change in the judicial process for any one of the categories. So I wanted to clarify the program as best that I can. The county executive spoke about the IGSA program, and I think he's going to speak further about it. That is also part of my department, and that is at the Ordinance Road Correctional Center. The 287G was at the Jennifer Road Detention Center, which is the intake facility for each and every individual. When the county executive indicated that 190 people were processed as foreign-born, that was out of an intake population that exceeded 7,000 during the same period of time. We process a lot of people in. Not having the 287G will save time and effort so my staff can focus in other areas of a normal intake of Anne Arundel County inmates, of which all who enter our doors are. So I want to thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. At this point, I would like to ask Chief of Police Tim Altamari to say a few words.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming out. I'd like to start with a couple thank yous. Pastor Jose Torres is here from the Heritage Church in Severn. I've asked the pastor to be here because he has been really integral in helping us as a police department build bridges and maintain them with our immigrant community in Anne Arundel County. One of the great joys of being the chief in Anne Arundel County is that I get to interact with folks from cultures that are varied, and I learn a lot about different parts of the world through interaction with those cultures. So, sir, I greatly appreciate everything you've done to help us build those bridges of trust. So trust is a big word I want to talk about today. We've heard a lot of facts. I'm not going to throw facts at you today. I want to talk about our heart. The Anne Arundel County Police Department is and always has been committed to being there for every part of this community. It does not matter to us what one's socioeconomic status is. It does not matter to us what part of the world a person grew up. It does not matter to us what color a person's skin is. It does not matter how much money they have in their pocket. We are here to serve the citizens of Anne Arundel County. When you're talking about trust, that's been something the police have to work on with the immigrant community, particularly the Hispanic immigrant community, for years. That trust starts in home countries, in countries of origin, where the police show up and people disappear in parts of the world and are never seen or heard from again. We have to start building bridges the second we get to interact with folks in this country. Every community in this county deserves the best we can give them. If someone needs help from this police department, they're going to get it. We will not ask a young lady who's been the victim of human trafficking, or a young man who's been the victim of violence against him, or someone who's been extorted, as Mr. Pittman was talking about earlier, what their immigration status is. We bring help. That's what we do. That's going to continue. The removal of the 287G program does not make my job harder in that respect. I will bring help. We will bring help. The Anne Arundel County Police Department will continue to do it. Nothing's going to change in the bridges we've built. Nothing's going to change in our posture every day. Nothing's going to change in the overtime, not a financial overtime, a heart overtime that we put in to helping people in this community. We talked about building bridges earlier. I'm going to close with this and ask Officer Marcos Parisi to come up, who has been one of our internal bridge builders on the Anne Arundel County Police Department. I'm going to let you off the hook. I don't need more than about 30 seconds or 1 minute, so don't get too nervous. We have a lot of people helping in this county. Ms. Casas goes in the back. Sergio Polanco's in the back. We have the people. We have the wood to build the bridge. We're going to keep doing it. Marcos, please come up and just let him see your heart a little bit.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Officer Parisi. I'm the Hispanic Liaison for the department. In the past years, the department has been working really hard to reach out and protect the Hispanic Latino community. I'd like to mention some of our past community outreach. I have the opportunity to meet leaders like Maria Casasco, Sergio Polanco, Pastor Jose Torres, and Pastor Castillo. And in those opportunities, I have speak with the community, the Hispanic community, and they have come to an understanding that we are here to protect, to serve, and to show the way. Another community outreach was different TV shows where I've been to, and I've been speaking about different concerns in the Latino Hispanic community, as well as the gang prevention awareness, where we are very involved to continue protecting the Hispanic community. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Marcos. All right, at this time, I would like to ask the county executive to come back up. He's going to speak about something else, and he is also going to sign the letter to ICE. Thank you. Switcheroo there.
Yes, took the wrong one. Took the wrong one, huh? Uh-oh. All right, well, it's clear to me, I hope it's clear to a lot of people that the time has come to make this formal. We're going to go back to the old way of doing things in the county, and I'm going to sign here a letter to Diane Whitty, the field officer at ICE in Baltimore. And it's a very simple letter. It simply says, Anne Arundel County, Maryland, and United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement entered into an MOA effective as of June 19, 2017, that provided for selected County Department of Detention Facilities personnel to perform certain functions of an immigration officer within the county correctional facilities. Pursuant to Section 21 of the MOA, this letter shall constitute written termination of the MOA effective immediately upon letter of this receipt, receipt of this letter by ICE. Thank you for your prompt attention to this matter. No surprise, they know this is coming. So this will arrive tomorrow. But we have not talked a lot about the detention center that we have at our Ordinance Road facility, which is our low and medium security facility. And this was a center that was designed by Superintendent Kokolas to be a progressive, modern detention center. And it was not full. And an arrangement was made to take 130 beds at Ordinance in Glen Burnie and house ICE detainees there. We receive $118 per day per detainee that's there, and they come from all over the country. In the campaign, I said that I was uncomfortable with this program, and I said that we should consider alternative uses for those 130 beds. I suggested that there were nonprofit organizations in this county that do addiction treatment that were looking for places to expand their services, and that might be an appropriate place. I've learned a few things since then. One, we have other opportunities for those organizations, particularly the Crownsville Hospital Center. But more importantly, I spoke to people who got involved and started visiting the Ordinance Correctional Center. There were representatives from ACT, which is an organization, and Arundel Connecting Together. It's a church-based community organizing group that started recently, and they've been visiting the facility. And those pastors in particular have told us that it's well-run, it's humane, and it's much better than the facilities elsewhere in Maryland and far better than the facilities down south where these people would be detained otherwise. Annapolis Immigration Justice Network also I met with, and they had the same feeling about it, and they were starting to provide legal services for some of the people there so that when they went to Baltimore for their hearings, most of the people there, I understand, have hearings pending in Baltimore on their immigration status, that they would have legal representation, and that the law would be applied fairly and efficiently by having that legal representation. I took it a step further, and I went and I visited yesterday, and I was briefed on how the operation works, and I spoke to some of the inmates there. Spoke to one from Nigeria who'd been in this country for 21 years, has 6 kids and a wife in Baltimore, and had been there for 10 months, and had also been at the detention center near Ocean City for 10 months. He told me that he'd been following my campaign. He was glad I won, but please don't close down this facility because it's the best. The others are much worse. He was awaiting his hearing in Baltimore. I talked to a Salvadoran who was 28 years old. He came here when he was 14 to escape the recruiters of the gangs in El Salvador. He'd been beaten up a couple times, and his family got him out of there at age 14. He's a second-generation carpenter. He was brought in on an offense that he was not guilty of, he says. It may or may not be, but he paid his bond so that he wouldn't go to jail. And as soon as he paid his bond and stepped away from the desk after signing the papers, they informed him that ICE was there to detain him because his immigration status was not up to date. So he's awaiting his hearing as well in Baltimore, and he also has a lawyer that his family is paying for. But what I've been told is that a lot of the people there do not have the resources to have legal representation. It's inefficient for the system to have people coming in without lawyers, and so I feel that it's our obligation as human beings and as people who believe in justice for all that we should do everything we can to provide legal assistance for these folks. So I think I'll be surprising some people today by saying that we will keep the Ordinance Detention Center open. We will continue that intergovernmental service agreement with ICE for the time being. We don't know how long it will last because we don't know what will happen with the next election in Washington and what immigration policy will be in the future. We know that it changes over the years, and there may or may not be a need for this detention center in the future. But for now, we will keep it open, and we will account for the money. I will make sure that in our next budget, the money that we get from this facility, we got $4 million last year from this, that we use it for public safety, that we use it for the good community work that we're doing in the communities, but also that we use some of it to ensure that the people there have legal representation when they go to Baltimore for their hearings. And I have with us here Gabriella Carl from the University of Maryland's University of Maryland Law School's Immigration Clinic, as well as Maureen Sweeney, who's somewhere here, who's the director of the clinic. But Gabriella is going to tell us something about what it means to provide legal service for these folks.
Good morning. As County Executive Pittman said, the people who are detained at Ordinance Road are members of our community. They are parents, they are caretakers, they are workers, they are friends. Many have status and are facing deportation. Providing lawyers ensures access to a fair process and an efficient court system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and open the floor to questions. Because there are a lot of people up here, I would just like that you announce who your question is directed to, give them a second to step up to the podium, and then go ahead with your question. Thank you.
County Executive, could you talk a little more about your ending this relationship with the federal government's program, but you're keeping the facility open? How exactly will that work?
So there are two different agreements. The 287G agreement we're ending, termination. And it's very easy to end. It says it's set up so that there's an easy out. You simply write the letter. Either party can end it on a moment's notice. It's a separate agreement for the Ordinance Road Detention Center. And in fact, that takes 3 months to end, but we're not choosing to end it. So it's a completely separate agreement. It just happens to also be with ICE for the detention center.
Can you tell us how the Latino community, the immigrant community is responding to your changes?
Well, we just made the announcement, so we will hear. But during the campaign, I was told by almost everybody universally that I talked to in the immigrant community that they didn't like 287G because there was a sense that, I think that it was even worse than it was, but a sense that there were people in county government who were working with ICE to implement an ICE policy that they saw as rounding up hardworking people in their communities and deporting them. And they don't want to be deported, they want to stay here. They're waiting for that time when the federal government does what Ronald Reagan did and provides a path to citizenship, and they're hoping that that happens. And so I think that people will be pleased that 287G no longer is in effect.
The 287G and the detainee program are two separate for the county. Are they separate for the federal as well? I mean, do we run any risk of having the Ordinance Road program pulled because we're withdrawing from the 287G?
No, I mean, they're completely separate agreements, and they're aware that we're going to end one and continue the other. I did address, we addressed in this report, the question of whether there would be any kind of backlash from ICE for us ending 287G, because I believe that in other jurisdictions there has been some of that. I don't want there to be an increase in raids on businesses from ICE as a result of this. And that's why I talked to them yesterday, and I don't believe that's going to happen because we're going back to where we were, and we're going to have the CAP program, and we're going to cooperate. We're not becoming a sanctuary county. We are simply going back to the way we did things before. 287G was a voluntary program. We found that it cost us. We were having to pay our people to do the work of ICE, and now ICE will do that work.
How much money do you think you guys could be redirecting from the contract for legal representation?
I don't know yet. I think that it will be a small percentage of it, and that most of that money will continue to, it goes into the general fund. It doesn't have its own special fund, but I will make sure that most of it's going into public safety.
Do these immigrants, these people, some of them who have status or may not, are they not allowed legal representation under the Constitution? I thought there was rulings that even undocumented immigrants were protected by the Constitution.
They're not provided lawyers. They're allowed to have legal representation, yes, and some do, but they have to pay for it, or an organization provides it. I understand in Baltimore there's a program where some get subsidized legal representation, and other counties have done this as well. And we'll be creating a program with the help of the University of Maryland to put that together.
Mr. Executive, was there a lot of complaints or outcry from foreign-born criminals or foreign-born citizens in the county that this federal program maybe was abusive or overstepping? Is that a factor in your decisions?
Yeah, and I think that because 287G used to have a component where the police officers were actually deputized to do the work of ICE. My understanding is that's no longer being done, but that some people don't get the details right, and fear takes over. And they're, even if they're told that the police officer is not doing the work of ICE, they know that if the person sitting in the jail, when they get processed, one of the first questions they'll be asked is about their immigration status, and that they'll be on that detainer. That creates a fear, less of an inclination to call the police when there's domestic abuse or whatever the issue is in the home or in the community. And that's what I've been hearing, that by ending 287G, people will be more comfortable with law enforcement.
During your campaign and since then, some people may have been saying that it's an unusual time to maybe be doing this in light of a program that's taken 3 dozen violent criminals off the street, and also the past year there's been a half a dozen murders possibly attributed to an organization that has a large influence of illegal aliens, so it might be a curious time to be making this change.
The program has not taken 3 dozen violent criminals off the street. 287G does not take anybody off the street. We have a criminal justice system, and we have to respect that. And I think it's an insult to our criminal justice system to suggest that we need ICE to tell us how and when to deal with our criminals. That is not the case, and that's a perception that some have adopted. And the purpose of this report and this press conference is to show people that that is not the case.
County Executive, you mentioned that there's fear in immigrant communities when it comes to 287G, but you're going back to the CAP program, in which a person's status is going to find its way to ICE anyway. So how does this really dissuade, how does this fix the fear issue by removing the 287G program?
Well, the CAP program is not voluntary. So the 287G program is voluntary. I mean, I think that people will continue to fear deportation. Because deportation, when you're in this country and you've come here seeking asylum, whatever the reason, and you fear going back to your country, you're going to fear deportation. And so whatever the system is, there's going to be some fear. We just don't believe that 287G, that extra step that we deputize our staff to do that work for ICE, is helpful.
You mentioned the cost element of this. Is that really the main reason, or are there? I mean, what are we talking about here? Why is the expense one of the main problems, and trust with law enforcement?
The cost of 287G is an issue. Our budget for our detention officers has been short. We have not provided the funding that they have requested each year. Dale Woodruff, who's the head of the union of the detention officers, comes to the county council on a regular basis and pleads for funding to get more detention officers hired. We have positions that have not been filled. They're working overtime. The overtime budget is too high. And so asking them to do ICE's work in addition to our work is a problem. The amount of time that the training takes while we're paying them, a month for 12 people, when you start adding that up, it's significant money. But that's not the only reason that we're ending the program. The other reasons we've talked about.
I've got a question for you, if he doesn't mind.
Hi, Chase.
How you doing, sir? Did you guys notice any difference after the county instituted its 287G program of communication or distrust with foreign-born communities?
Well, I think that's kind of a three-pronged answer, if you'll allow me. A, the police department worked really hard to message the fact that we were not involved in 287G. You heard Mr. Pittman say that there used to be programs where the police are involved. I think there still are extant programs in the country where police are deputized. We said very forcefully and very quickly that we had no interest in being deputized, and we had no interest in that realm coming into how we provide service in the county because of the fear. I was gratified at the time that the past administration understood that fairly quickly after I made my points. So that's prong one. We weren't involved into it. Prong two is we've worked so much to make people understand that the Anne Arundel County Police Department doesn't care about your documents when we come to help you. So we haven't seen a lessening in communication because we've worked so hard at it. Or, I don't want to take credit, but we haven't seen the lack of communication, but we've worked so hard at it. And then the third prong is, day after day, you got to put your money where your mouth is, right? So I will tell you that as we've gone after predators, every population, doesn't matter where on earth you look or what people look like, every population has predators who prey on them. We've put our money where our mouth is to make sure we're going after predators day to day, and that we're helping mom and dad, and we're helping the young kid who's being forced into choices, not given viable choices. We've made sure that we are extending the helping hand twice for every time we are overt in our enforcement activity going after predators. So we're doing good, I think is the final answer to that question, and we're going to keep doing good. Did I answer you okay?
All right, thank you guys so much for coming out. We really appreciate it. Mr. Pittman's PIO is out of town, so if you have any follow-up questions, need anything else, please reach out to me. I'll take care of it for you. As always, again, get home safe. Thank you very much.